The moment I heard my husband say, "By tomorrow morning she'll own absolutely nothing," I stopped breathing. He wasn't talking about another woman. He was talking about me. I stood frozen outside the study listening as the man I'd been married to for 23 years calmly discussed how he was going to destroy my life. His attorney sat across the desk. A stack of legal documents lay between them. Marcus sounded relaxed, almost excited. "Once the court believes she's emotionally unstable," he said, "everything becomes simple. The house, the accounts, the investments, she won't know what hit her." The attorney nodded. "We've prepared the paperwork. The financial transfers happen immediately after the temporary orders are signed." Marcus laughed. "I told you she trusts me. Diane never questions anything." They thought I was asleep upstairs. They had no idea I was standing just a few feet away, hearing every word. My heart pounded so hard I was sure they could hear it through the wall. I wanted to throw open the door. I wanted to scream. I wanted to demand how the man who once promised to love me forever had become someone I no longer recognized. Instead, I stayed perfectly still. One wrong move, one creaking floorboard, and they'd know I'd heard everything. So I quietly stepped away from the door and walked upstairs. Only after I closed the bedroom door did the tears finally come, and I made the most important decision of my life. But what I discovered before dawn was even worse than the betrayal itself, because my husband wasn't acting alone. Before we dive deeper, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button, so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. I sat on the edge of the bed, trying to understand what I'd just heard. For 23 years, I'd stood beside Marcus through every promotion, every business setback, every mortgage payment, every family holiday. I believed we were building a life together. Now I realized he'd been planning an escape that left me with nothing. The worst part wasn't the money. It was the lies. The good morning kisses, the anniversary dinners, the vacations we'd planned for retirement. Every memory suddenly felt borrowed from a marriage that had never really existed. I looked at our wedding picture on the dresser, 2 smiling faces, 2 people making promises they believed would last forever. I picked up the frame, stared at it for a long moment, then gently placed it face down. I wasn't crying anymore. Something inside me had changed. If Marcus thought I was going to panic, he'd underestimated me. I reached for my phone and called the only person I knew I could trust. Robert Haynes, my father's attorney. He answered immediately. "Diane, I'm sorry for calling so late." "You never have to apologize. What's wrong?" I took a shaky breath. "I overheard Marcus." There was a brief silence. "What did you hear?" "He's planning to divorce me." Another pause. "He wants the court to believe I'm mentally unstable. He thinks he'll walk away with everything." Robert didn't sound surprised. Instead, he spoke carefully. "Can you come to my office first thing tomorrow morning?" "Robert, if what I heard is true, I don't have until tomorrow. He's already preparing the paperwork." "I understand. So what do I do?" "Tonight, do nothing." "What?" "Go back downstairs if you have to. Act normal. Don't let Marcus know you've heard a single word." "That's impossible." "No," Robert replied, "it's necessary." I closed my eyes. "There has to be something we can do." "There is," his voice remained calm, "but not tonight." "Why?" "Because before you make your next move, there's something your father wanted you to know." I frowned. "My father?" "Come see me at 8 o'clock tomorrow morning. Bring nothing except yourself." "What is it?" "I'd rather show you than explain it over the phone." I wanted answers. Instead, I got silence. "Trust me, Diane." After we ended the call, I barely slept. Around midnight, Marcus came into the bedroom. He smiled the same smile I'd seen thousands of times. He leaned over and kissed my forehead. "Long day tomorrow," he whispered. "Get some rest." I looked into his eyes and wondered how someone could lie so effortlessly. "I will," I replied quietly. He fell asleep within minutes. I didn't. Before sunrise, I got dressed, left the house without waking him, and drove to Robert's office in Greenwich, Connecticut. He was already waiting. Without saying a word, he handed me a thick folder. I've kept this safe for 11 years, he said. I opened it. Inside were trust documents, property records, bank authorizations, and my late father's estate papers. I don't understand, I said. Robert pointed to the first page. Read the owner listed here. I did. It wasn't Marcus. It was me. He turned another page, then another. The same name appeared again. Mine. The house, I looked up, the investment accounts, another page, the commercial properties, another page. Every major asset carried the same legal owner. Me. I stared at Robert, unable to speak. He folded his hands across the desk. Diane, your husband believes he's about to take everything from you. He let the words settle before continuing. But legally, almost everything he plans to take has never belonged to him. I looked down at the documents again, searching for some detail I had missed. There has to be a mistake, I whispered. There isn't. But Marcus signed loan documents, he negotiated purchases, he ran the businesses. He managed them, Robert corrected gently. Managing something doesn't make you its owner. My hands trembled as I closed the folder. So what happens now? Now you stop reacting emotionally and start thinking strategically. I took a slow breath. What would you do if you were me? Robert didn't hesitate. I would let Marcus believe his plan is working. I frowned. You want me to pretend I know nothing? Exactly, he leaned forward. People make mistakes when they're overconfident. Marcus believes he's already won. Don't take that confidence away from him. I nodded slowly. For the first time since overhearing that conversation, I felt something stronger than fear. Control. Robert opened another folder. There are 3 joint accounts Marcus can access immediately. My stomach tightened. I want those emptied today. What? Not hidden, not spent, moved into the family trust. Can he stop me? No. What if he notices? He won't until tomorrow morning. I stared at him. How can you be so sure? Because his attorney scheduled the filing for tomorrow at 9, he thinks you'll wake up to frozen accounts. Instead, Robert smiled for the first time. He'll wake up to empty ones. It felt unreal. An hour later, I walked into our bank downtown. The young branch manager greeted me with a smile. Good morning, Mrs. Henderson. I need to make several transfers. And she glanced at the paperwork Robert had prepared. Within minutes, the first account was moved, then the second, then the third. Millions of dollars quietly disappeared from the joint accounts Marcus believed he controlled. No alarms sounded, no phones rang, no one stopped me. By noon, every dollar had been transferred into accounts protected by my family's trust. I signed the final page. The manager handed me a receipt. Everything has been completed. I folded it carefully into my purse. Walking back to my car, I expected to feel triumphant. Instead, I felt heartbroken. This wasn't revenge. This was survival. 23 years of marriage had led me to a parking lot, carrying paperwork that protected me from the man I once trusted with my entire life. When I arrived home that afternoon, Marcus was standing in the kitchen making coffee. He smiled the moment he saw me. There you are. I had some errands. He walked over and kissed my cheek. I was thinking we should go out for dinner tonight. For one brief second, I searched his face for guilt. There was none. Only confidence, only certainty that his secret was safe. Dinner sounds nice, I answered. His smile widened. There's my girl. My girl. The words almost made me laugh. After everything I'd heard the night before, they sounded less like affection and more like ownership. That evening we sat in one of our favorite restaurants overlooking Long Island Sound. The waiter poured wine. Marcus talked about work, a new commercial development, a golf trip with investors, an upcoming board meeting. He never mentioned divorce, he never mentioned lawyers, he never mentioned the future he'd already planned without me. Then his phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen. A smile flashed across his face before he quickly locked it again. Everything okay? I asked. Just work. He answered too quickly. For years I would have believed him. Now I noticed everything. The nervous tap of his fingers, the way he kept turning his phone face down, the slight smile he couldn't hide. Whoever had texted him mattered. I didn't ask another question. If Marcus wanted to underestimate me, I was happy to let him. That night after he fell asleep, I quietly slipped out of bed. His phone rested on the nightstand beside him. For several seconds I simply looked at it. I had never gone through my husband's phone, not once in 23 years. Trust had always been enough. Until now. I picked it up carefully. The screen lit up. He hadn't changed the passcode. Our wedding anniversary. Irony had apparently escaped him. The phone unlocked. My heartbeat quickened. The first message wasn't from his attorney. It wasn't from a client. It was from someone saved simply as Natalie. Everything is ready. She still doesn't suspect anything. Tomorrow will finally be over. Below it was Marcus's reply. She'll walk away with nothing, then we can stop hiding. I felt the room spin. This wasn't just about money. There was another woman. I scrolled through months of messages. Vacation photos, dinner reservations, plans for a beach house in Florida, conversations about redecorating. They weren't dreaming about a future. They were planning to move into it the moment I was gone. Then one message stopped me cold. Natalie wrote, "Are you sure she doesn't know about your sister?" Marcus answered only seconds later. "Sandra would never betray me. She'll testify exactly the way we discussed." I read that sentence 3 times. Sandra, Marcus's younger sister. The woman who had spent every Thanksgiving at our table. The woman who called me her sister. The woman I had helped through chemotherapy. She was involved. I slowly locked the phone and placed it exactly where I'd found it. Sleep was impossible. Just before dawn, my own phone vibrated. A message from an unknown number appeared. "Don't let Marcus know you've seen anything. He isn't telling you the whole truth. Meet me alone tomorrow morning. I'll explain everything." There was no name. No explanation. Only an address. And as I stared at the screen, a second message appeared. "I'm the only person who can prove what they're planning." The next morning, I drove to the address from the text message with more questions than answers. It was a small coffee shop tucked away on a quiet street in Greenwich. I arrived 15 minutes early. Every person who walked through the door made my heart race. Then I saw her. Sandra, Marcus's younger sister. She looked exhausted. The moment she sat across from me, tears filled her eyes. "I'm sorry," she whispered. I stared at her, unable to hide my disappointment. "So it was you." She nodded. "I know what Marcus told you, or what he planned to tell you, but please let me explain." I folded my arms. "You have one chance." Sandra reached into her handbag and placed a small digital recorder on the table. "I've been recording Marcus's meetings for almost 3 months." I looked at her in disbelief. "What? I never agreed with what he was doing." "Then why did you stay silent?" She lowered her eyes. "Because he threatened me." She took a shaky breath. "My son works for one of Marcus's companies. He said he'd fire him, ruin his career, and make sure he never found another job if I interfered." I said nothing. I was terrified. She slid the recorder toward me, "But I couldn't let him destroy you." Robert listened to every recording that afternoon. There was no doubt. Marcus had carefully planned everything. The false claims about my mental health, the hidden relationship with Natalie, the strategy to convince the court that I couldn't manage my own finances, even discussions about selling our home immediately after the divorce. Every word had been recorded. Robert looked at me. "This changes everything." For the first time since that terrible night outside the study, I allowed myself to breathe. The court hearing arrived 2 days later. Marcus walked into the courthouse wearing an expensive navy suit. Natalie sat quietly near the back of the courtroom, believing no one noticed her. When Marcus saw me, he smiled politely. It was the same smile he'd worn at our wedding. The same smile he'd worn over dinner only days earlier. But this time I saw exactly what it hid. The hearing began. Marcus's attorney painted a heartbreaking picture. According to him, I had become forgetful, emotional, unable to make sound financial decisions. He even produced copies of therapy appointments, hoping to convince the judge they proved instability instead of something much simpler. Grief. I listened without interrupting. When they finished, the judge turned toward Robert. Counsel. Robert stood. Your Honor, before addressing the claims made today, I'd like to submit several pieces of evidence. The courtroom became silent. The recordings were played one by one. Marcus's voice filled the room, clear, calm, confident. Once the judge believes she's unstable, everything becomes simple. Another recording. She trusts me completely. Another. Natalie and I can finally move into the house. No one spoke. Marcus's face lost every trace of confidence. Natalie looked down at the floor. Then Robert submitted the financial documents. The petitioner believes these assets belong to both parties, he said. They do not. He handed the judge copies of the trust agreements, the commercial properties, the investment accounts, the primary residence. Every major asset was legally placed into the Henderson family trust more than a decade ago. The judge spent several minutes reviewing the paperwork. Finally, he looked directly at Marcus. Were you aware of these ownership documents? Marcus opened his mouth. Nothing came out. For the first time since I'd met him, he had no answer. The hearing ended far sooner than anyone expected. Marcus's requests were denied. The court dismissed every allegation regarding my mental health. An investigation into the fraudulent evidence was ordered. As people slowly left the courtroom, Natalie hurried toward the exit without looking back. Marcus remained seated. He looked smaller somehow, not because he'd lost money, because he'd finally lost the illusion that he controlled everything. Outside the courthouse, he caught up with me. Diane, I turned around. I made mistakes. I waited. I was under pressure. Still, I said nothing. He stepped closer. We can fix this. I smiled sadly. No, Marcus, you don't mean that. After everything we've built together. I looked into his eyes one last time. What we built together was real to me. I paused, but only to me. He lowered his head. I never wanted to hurt you. I couldn't help but shake my head. You planned every detail. You rehearsed every lie. You looked me in the eyes every morning knowing exactly what you intended to do. I felt surprisingly calm. I can forgive what happened. His eyes lifted with hope. But forgiveness doesn't mean giving someone another opportunity to betray you. I walked away without looking back. The divorce was finalized several months later. It was quiet, respectful. There were no dramatic arguments, no public revenge, no celebration, only closure. I sold the large house that had once felt like my dream home. Not because I had to, because I no longer wanted to live surrounded by memories that no longer belonged to me. I bought a smaller home overlooking the Connecticut shoreline. Every morning I drank my coffee on the back porch as the sun rose over the water. For the first time in years, the silence felt peaceful instead of lonely. Sandra visited often. Our friendship survived because she eventually chose courage over fear. Her son found a better job with another company and thanked me for giving his mother a second chance. As for Natalie, I never saw her again. I heard she left town only weeks after the court hearing. Marcus's business reputation never fully recovered. Not because I tried to destroy him. Because trust, once broken publicly, is difficult to rebuild. One autumn afternoon, nearly a year after everything happened, I opened the last letter my father had ever written to me. It had been tucked inside the trust documents all along. His handwriting immediately brought tears to my eyes. My dear Diane, if life ever brings you to this letter, remember one thing. Wealth can be rebuilt, a home can be replaced, but your peace of mind is priceless. Never stay where your kindness is mistaken for weakness. The right people will never require you to prove your worth. They will simply value it. I folded the letter carefully and smiled through my tears. For years I believed the greatest gift my father left me was financial security. I was wrong. The greatest gift he left me was the wisdom to recognize my own value before someone else convinced me I had none. Looking back now, I don't remember the courtroom. I don't remember the legal documents. I don't even remember the money. I remember the moment I chose myself, because losing the person who betrayed you isn't the tragedy. Losing yourself while trying to keep them is. And the day I walked away wasn't the day my life fell apart. It was the day it truly began. If you loved this story, please subscribe so you don't miss the next one. Thank you so much for watching.